Ladies and gentlemen, can you please take your seats and we can start. Dear delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I think we can resume the session. Apology for the slight delay. If I can ask everybody to take seats, please take seats and we start. So welcome back to the plenary session at the second Global Refugee Forum. I hope you had a good break, side events, and discussions. I am honored to be joined on the podium here by a representative of our co-host, Switzerland, Ambassador Julien Teuny of the Permanent Mission of Switzerland at the UN in Geneva. And I already introduced to you this morning Anne Kea, our secretary that will continue to support us. Before we start again with the speaking list, as announced this morning, I will give the floor to Philippe Lazzarini, my colleague and dear friend, Commissioner General of UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees. I don't need to introduce him. I think I'm not so sure this is good, but you hear about him and from him frequently in these dramatic days in Gaza, and I thought it was very important, of course, to have UNRWA here as the other United Nations refugee organization, but even more so, even more particularly so at this time of history that we have already discussed this morning during various interventions. This statement by the Commissioner General will be a special address that will inaugurate our afternoon session. So without further ado, Philippe, if I may ask you to take your place at the podium and give us your address. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my dear friend Filippo. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I arrived in Geneva last night, straight from Gaza, my third time since the devastating war started. I have to say, it is a living hell. Most of Gaza's population has been forcibly displaced, largely into the southern part of the Strip, Rafah. Rafah is now hosting well over 1 million people. It used to be home of 280,000 people. It lacks the infrastructure and resources to support such a population. Inside our own warehouses, families live in tiny spaces that are separated by blankets hung on thin wooden structures. Out in the open, flimsy shelters have emerged everywhere. Rafah has become a tented community. The spaces around UNRWA's building are congested with shelters and desperate, hungry people. Aid can no longer reach those who could not move to the south. There is no more food to buy, even for those who can pay. In the shops, the shelves are empty. The sight of a truck carrying humanitarian assistance now provokes chaos. People are hungry. They stop the truck and ask for food, and they eat it on the street. I witnessed this firsthand when I entered into Gaza on Monday evening. To call such scenes inhuman is an understatement. Civil order is breaking down. The people of Gaza are now crammed into less than 1/3 of the original territory near the Egyptian border. It is unrealistic to think that people will remain resilient in the face of unlivable conditions of such magnitude, especially when the border is so close. Excellencies, I wrote to the President of the General Assembly last week, warning that UNRWA's ability to fulfill its mandate in Gaza is severely limited. The entire humanitarian response heavily relies on UNRWA's capacity. It is now on the verge of collapse. UNRWA is still operating 8 health centers out of 22. We are sheltering more than 1 million people in our school and other facilities. Our social workers are supporting traumatized people as best they can. We are still distributing whatever food we manage to bring in, but this is often as little as a bottle of water and a can of tuna per day, per family, often numbering 6 or 7 people. This operational reality is not sustainable, not for the population, not for the agency. More than 130 UNRWA staff are confirmed killed. Many of our staff, who are themselves displaced, take their children to work with them to ensure that they are safe together or die together. I asked one colleague how he managed to remain composed and offer help in a shelter. He told me he is looking for a corner in the building to go to cry 10 times a day. Excellencies, there is nowhere to feel safe in Gaza. Civilian infrastructure and UN facilities have not been spared by the shellings. I was horrified by images yesterday of an UNRWA school being blown up in the north of Gaza. The people of Gaza are running out of time and options as they face bombardment, deprivation, and disease in an ever shrinking space. They are facing the darkest chapter of their history since 1948. And it has been a painful history. The events in Gaza are taking place against a backdrop of 75 years of displacement, 75 years of failures to find a just and lasting solution to the plight of Palestinian refugees. During this time, they have been deprived of the basic human rights and the right to self-determination. Throughout the region, many continue to live in overcrowded refugee camps with substandard living conditions, generation after generation. For the last 75 years, the world has asked UNRWA to uphold the rights of Palestinian refugees. And we have done so successfully, contributing to their development and to the feeling of stability as much as possible. Over 2 million students have graduated from our schools, and half of them girls. Health indicators among this refugee community exceed WHO standard. But today, and despite our successes, UNRWA suffers from chronic underfunding, which impacts the quality of our services. Upholding refugees' rights is not only the responsibility of humanitarian and development actors, it is a responsibility shared with donors and host countries. I would like here to thank the countries who have hosted, for the last 7 decades, millions of Palestinian refugees. I also thank our partners and donors for their support and trust. But Palestinian refugees need a just solution, not just aid. Today, they feel abandoned by the international community. They feel betrayed as the world fails to act in the face of one of the worst humanitarian catastrophes of our time in Gaza. They now believe that human lives are not equal and human rights are not universal. This is a dangerous message, and it will have serious repercussions. Excellencies, the Global Refugee Forum represents the political will of the international community to affirm the human rights of all people fleeing wars and other crises, whether it is Syrian, Somali, Afghan, or Palestinian. Addressing the plight of refugees and upholding their rights requires the political will to tackle the root causes of their displacement. Refugees often stay in that status for far, far too long. And this is not unique to Palestinian refugees. All refugees remain refugees until they receive a change of status, acquire citizenship, or return to the country of origin. Both UNHCR and UNRWA are the expression of a collective responsibility of United Nations member states towards refugees. The people of Gaza, like all people, long for safety, stability, and fulfillment. This is also the forum where I must raise the alarm about the dehumanization that is rampant during this war. The war in Gaza heavily relies on a media war. Dehumanizing and derogatory language should not be normalized. The lack of empathy only fuels divide, polarization, and hatred. I am horrified at the smear campaigns that target Palestinians and all those who provide assistance and protection to them. Our partner present here must help us push back against hatred and debunk repeated vulgar accusations. It is disheartening that some long-standing partners are choosing to believe the barrage of misinformation and seeks to discredit UNRWA. I urge our partners to remain vigilant and not to act upon distorted facts. I have, Excellencies, 3 calls today. First, we need an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza and an end to the siege to let in sufficient aid. And I welcome here the overwhelming support of 153 member states at the General Assembly calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. Second, we must be able to roll out humanitarian assistance worthy of its names. It needs to be meaningful. The day after the war in Gaza will be shaped by how we respond to the current crisis. What can 100 trucks or so per day offer to 2.2 million people? The high-level discussion about the number of trucks per day have taken up so much time and energy that I have no answer to a father of 5 in Rafah who asked me how he and his children can survive on 1 can of beans for 3 days. We are very far from an adequate humanitarian response. And third, collectively, we need and we must ensure that international humanitarian law is still the regulating framework of the conflict. It cannot be selective or be reinterpreted. To conclude, the Israel-Palestinian conflict has been neglected for far too long. The political process needs to be revived urgently. There is absolutely no alternative to a genuine political process to end the cycle of violence. Israeli and Palestinian must both enjoy statehood, peace, and stability. This will require dedicated efforts to help both societies heal and live side by side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner General. Thank you, Philippe. Allow me to simply say that as a former Commissioner General myself, I feel very strongly for what you said, and I hope that your requests will be heeded and responded to. In particular, the request to support UNRWA. If there was any time in which the importance of UNRWA to save lives and build lives was to be proven, is this time. And I hope that his appeal will be heeded. And let me add from my perspective another point. Philippe was very clear about the Palestinian population in Gaza being already refugee families. Let this crisis, which is already a crisis of displacement, not become another refugee crisis. We cannot accept that. Thank you very much for your statement. We resume now the speaking list, and j'ai l'honneur de donner.
I have the honor of giving the floor to the Vice Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs of Luxembourg, Mr. Xavier Bettel. Thank you, and good afternoon. It's 26 days now that I have been in office after having served as Prime Minister for 10 years. Now I am the Minister for Foreign and European Affairs, and I have to say I've rarely seen so many multifaceted crises as today. You know, we're acting as firemen all over the place. I am fortunate enough to live in a country where we have transparent elections. We have had a transparent transition. You know, I've moved from being Prime Minister to Foreign Minister and Vice Prime Minister, and that's no secret. But I must say that on the European continent, we have seen an increasing trend of parties that defend humanist values and values of tolerance not being that popular. You know, the PVD arrived top of the ranks in the Netherlands, and we are seeing an uptick in more extreme views.
So a French-speaking country, it was important to support the French language too. It is, for me, very important that when we speak about migration, we need to also be able to speak about the roots. And so we have the conflicts and we have the climate question. When we speak about the climate questions, I just heard that the results of the COP are not that strong. If we want really to fight the fact of migrations because of climate questions, it will be very important also to take seriously, maybe in popular measures, also in favor of the climate. And we have tendency to forget the climate. When we have new crises, we forget the climate and we take as business as usual. When we speak about conflicts, we have conflicts everywhere. I remind after the COVID, we all thought, oh, fantastic, now it's over, and then we had the war in Ukraine. After the war in Ukraine now, and still war in Ukraine, we have the situation in Gaza. We have to be aware. My country was, and will stay a very open country. But for the moment, we have the situation that we had over 8,000 people who moved to Luxembourg, who migrated to Luxembourg, and over 4,200 people coming from Ukraine. I'm in a situation now that there are no beds available. No beds, nothing. I'm trying to find an urgent solution. But I have to be careful, and I don't want to promise things I won't be able to realize. I continue as solidar as long as I can, but I do not accept that nowadays for migration questions, it depends in fact where your borders are. I'm coming from an European project, which was a solidarity project. When I see today that Spain, Italy, France, Greece, Cyprus, Malta, because they have borders or because they're on the sea, they are alone responsible. Then I had no solidarity from the Eastern countries because they said, well, we can speak about migrations, but if they could be white and Catholics would be easier. Now, with the Ukraine situations, they say that the countries from the south should be more solidar with them because they need to have the cost of that. Or we are solidar and we don't care where the people come from, the color they have, the religions they have, but it's just because they want not a better life, but to survive because they are victim of a conflict, that we politicians decided, that we politicians are never on the front, but provoking deaths of civilians and families. then we have to be able to have this solidarity and not depending on where people come from or if we need them or not. So I want to tell you that we will continue to be solidar. We also are happy to be able to work with ITU, GSMA, and also with you on the initiative of the creation of the sector of connectivity also for refugees, because it's so important to be connected, to know what's happening also with the families when you have been out of your natural and the habits that you have usually, and we also will have 1 million euros to help to this deficit of connectivity for these persons. And tomorrow there will be also a conference on that here on this place. So solidarity, yes. Being open, yes. I'm in favor of a Europe of values, not a Europe of fences and high walls and bricks. But we have to know that if we are not able to be solidar together, at the end we won't be able even to speak about solidarity, because people sitting in international forums will be the one who will destroy all the values we fought the last 60 years. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Vice-Premier Ministre. Merci, Xavier. And may I just, thank you for the statement. May I just recall that we have fixed a 3-minute time limit. I would beg you to try and respect it so that everybody can speak. We have a very long list of speakers. I will now give the floor to Mr. Hossein Amir Abdollahian, Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Minister, you have the floor.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Mr. President, High Commissioner Grandi, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is a great pleasure for me to participate on behalf of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the world's largest refugee hosting nation, in the Global Refugee Forum. Let me now, I would like to continue my statement in beautiful Persian language.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to participate on behalf of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the world's largest refugee hosting nation, in the Global Refugee Forum. Dear colleagues, the key question concerning the refugee problem has been why just a few countries must take responsibility for most of the world's refugees. The Global Refugee Forum was established to rally global solidarity in practice and mobilize necessary resources to assist the major refugee hosting countries. Nevertheless, no temporary solution is durable. The UNHCR and the international community should redouble their efforts to facilitate and expedite repatriation of refugees to their home countries. As you all know, it is now more than 45 years that Iran has been hosting the most protracted refugee crisis in the world, turning my country into the largest refugee hosting country worldwide, following the latest political turmoil in neighboring Afghanistan in 2021. Frequent unlawful military interventions and other interferences by outside powers in our vicinity have caused pandemic instability, insecurity, and underdevelopment that in turn have led to the influx of refugees across the region. In fact, the Islamic Republic of Iran has had to shoulder the burden inflicted upon the region as the result of irresponsible, coercive policies and militancy of the United States and its allies in our region. Our approach toward refugees is one of the most humanitarian and of human solidarity. The Iranian people have generously shared their limited resources with huge Afghan refugee populations, despite all the odds, much of which originate from the United States' unlawful and inhuman sanctions. We have tried our best, based on our human-centered national values and Islamic precepts, to provide refugees in Iran with basic living standards, health care, and education. All Afghan children of school age are eligible, equal to their Iranian peers, to attend primary and secondary school, regardless of their documentation status. Right now, more than 700,000 refugee children are registered in public schools across the country. Additional training courses and classes are provided for Afghan adults as part of a literacy promotion movement to educate the dropout refugees. Many Afghans are studying in Iranian universities and colleges, including under available governmental supports and scholarships. Tens of thousands of vulnerable Afghan refugees enjoy healthcare insurance, and free medical services are provided for persons with special and hard-to-cure illnesses. Afghan refugees also receive free vaccination against certain diseases, including COVID-19. Mr. President, it is simply not fair, nor is it feasible for a single country to host the largest and most protracted refugee crisis on its own. The principle of burden and responsibility sharing requires a more equitable division of diverse costs of refugee hosting among a greater number of states. This is unfortunately not the case for my country, as we face an ever-increasing pressure on our limited national resources to help the influx of Afghan refugees. This is an unprecedented challenge, as our public infrastructure and healthcare system, basic education, employment, energy, and water sectors are under immense pressure due to the huge number of refugees. While we appreciate the UNHCR's commitment and efforts to help Afghan refugees in Iran, the realities on the ground indicate that only 1% of the costs incurred by a huge population of more than 5 million refugees are covered by the UNHCR's contribution.
Try to come to a close,
Yes, of
please.
course.
Thank you very much.
Just a moment, please.
I should underline that Iran's outstanding sacrifice in hosting the largest refugee population is unparalleled, since my nation is, at the same time, under the most brutal economic sanctions by the United States. Unilateral coercive measures, as unlawful and inhuman as they are, have also badly limited the humanitarian space by having a huge impact on aid agencies' capacity to assist the people in need, including the refugee populations residing in the targeted states. No man or woman of right conscience can afford to keep silent over the tragic humanitarian situation in Gaza Strip and the whole occupied land of Palestine, while innocent people are indiscriminately slaughtered and their residential buildings are bombed with the intent to forcibly move them out of their homeland. The Israeli occupying regime is creating another influx of refugees to be added to the already more than 7 million Palestinians.
Of course. و افزودن میلیون‌ها نفر به جمعیت
7 million Palestinians who are living across the globe as refugees. Dear colleagues, a full-scale new refugee crisis is unfolding before our eyes in a most vicious manner. More than 20,000 innocent people, the majority of them small kids and women, have been massacred during the past 2 months, with the UN Security Council being made paralyzed by the United States to do any move to stop the Israeli cruelty. The only way to avert this new refugee crisis is to stop the genocidal invasion of Gaza, prevent the forced transfer of Gaza residents, and open the Rafah crossing for humanitarian aid. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Minister. I would like to really make a strong appeal to all delegations to stay within the 3 minutes, because otherwise we won't be able to cover the whole speaking list. And it's now my great pleasure to give the floor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia, Retno Marsudi. Minister, you have the floor.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Mr. Chairman, colleagues, we are seeing a dramatic increase in refugees globally. Clearly, our world is not fine. Wars and conflict are raging across the globe, triggering mass displacement. Addressing these root causes requires our collective commitment. We all have to play our parts to ending wars and conflict. We all have the same responsibility to respect international law, including international humanitarian law. This includes in Palestine, where Palestinians have been forced for decades to flee their own homes and see their land taken away. Now the people in Gaza are living through a never-ending nightmare. Our demand for ceasefire continues to hit the wall. In Myanmar, violence has also forced Rohingya out of their country. We must work together to end conflict in Myanmar and to restore democracy so that the Rohingyas can safely return home. Chair, I'm concerned with the recent trend whereas refugees are falling victims to transnational organized crime. Thousands of Rohingyas are arriving on Indonesia's shores recently. There is a strong indication they are victims of trafficking in person and people smuggling. We cannot let transnational criminal networks complicate our efforts in dealing with refugees. We will not hesitate to take firm against this criminal network, including by strengthening law enforcement measures. But we also cannot handle these challenges by ourselves. Addressing transnational organized crime requires stronger cooperation involving countries in the region. In the meantime, we must also strengthen cooperation with UNODC, UNHCR, and IOM. State parties to Refugees Convention must abide by their international obligation. The resettlement process have shown very little progress, and state parties are closing their doors to new resettlement. Chair, Indonesia has fulfilled 8 out of 9 pledges we made in 2019. Our commitment is firm to strengthen concrete and practical cooperation within the Bali process as the region premier forum, involving countries of origin, transit, and destination. I thank you very much. Less than 3 minutes, Mr. Chairman.
You're wonderful, as always. Thank you so much for that and giving the example. J'ai l'honneur de donner.
I have the honor of giving the floor now to the Foreign Affairs Minister of Cameroon, Mr. Lejeune Mbela Mbela. You have the floor, Minister. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, heads of delegation, heads of state and government, Mr. High Commissioner, it is for me a true pleasure and an honor to take the floor today. I have been mandated to do so by the head of state, His Excellency Mr. Paul Biya. I am doing so on behalf of the Republic of Cameroon here at this second edition of the Global Forum for Refugees. Before continuing with my remarks, with your leave, I should like to thank our hosts, as well as Mr. Filippo Grandi, the High Commissioner for Refugees of the United Nations. They have been so kind as to bring my country into the fold of this global gathering to address a multifaceted problem that affects us all, that is to say, international protection. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, with a refugee population estimated in November 2023 at some 475,000 individuals from more than 30 countries, that is to say, approximately 2% of the population of my country, Cameroon currently is sitting in 7th place on the African level and 19th place globally as a host country. And we afford the management of and stewardship of refugees very careful attention, contributing to improving the living conditions of refugees in a significant manner is the raison d'etre of our participation in such an event as this. It is thus that in 2019, at the first forum, we took on 6 commitments that covered the priority areas for our country, to wit, health, education, socio-economic inclusion, and the issuance of documents that cover the above-mentioned needs. Here, while our commitments to the above has been satisfactory, the Republic of Cameroon has made the choice to include the environmental factor. Hence, the 5 principal commitments made by the Republic of Cameroon are as follows. First, we seek an enrollment level for refugees in primary education that is equal to that of our nationals, and we would like to reach the level of 15% in higher education by 2023. Secondly, we would like to ensure the inclusion of refugees in the implementation of universal healthcare coverage. We plan to continue our support to refugee medical costs at 30% for our government and 70% by the High Commissioner for Refugees, or the High Commissioner's Office. This is in step with the framework agreement signed in 2021 between our Ministry of Public Health and the country team of the High Commissioner for Refugees. Third, we wish to continue with the issuance of ID cards, civil status documents, and travel documents in order to facilitate the socioeconomic inclusion of refugees by 2025. Further, we wish to bolster mechanisms for environmental protection. This includes the promotion of reforesting and a focus on alternate energy sources in those locations that are receiving a great many refugees. And fifth, to bear in mind the needs of the refugees in the planning tools of our decentralized territorial collectives. The idea being to better support the decentralization process that is underway. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, these 5 commitments dovetail happily among some 12 multi-partite commitments. This covers the entirety of the needs of the refugees that we receive and host. These needs aim to provide protection, socioeconomic inclusion, and the organization of voluntary repatriation. Attaining these commitments are priorities for the state of Cameroon. They also depend on the Global Compact for Refugees and the support of many actors. This includes multi-sectoral donors, PPPs, and really the goal is building a veritable synergy in such matters. Before closing my remarks, I would like to recall that Cameroon has signed tripartite agreements by 2020. We signed in 2017 documents to address the crisis in the Central African Republic. This is a commitment of the President of the Republic of Cameroon, His Excellency Mr. Paul Biya, and it is a priority of the government to work tirelessly for the the peaceful return of refugees to their respective countries. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you, Minister.
Pleasure to give the floor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the State of Kuwait, Sheikh Salem Abdallah Jaber al-Sabah. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, High Commissioner Grandi, and I will now speak in my native tongue. أصحاب الفخامة والمعالي والسعادة السيدات والسادة السلام عليكم.
Ladies and gentlemen, may the peace and blessing of God be upon you. First of all, allow me to extend my gratitude to all the brother countries and friends for convening these events. We hope this will be an opportunity to bridge the gaps left after the first global forum in order to alleviate the suffering of refugees and host countries, and also to ensure a safe and dignified return for refugees. Allow me also to say that my country fully supports all efforts made by the UNHCR as well as the specialized UN agencies to assist refugees and displaced persons around the world. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, my country is proud of its excellent relationship with the HCR. We also take pride in the fact that we are one of the HCR's top donors. Kuwait has provided $18.5 million over the year 2022-2023 in order to support refugees across the world. Our contribution amounts to $460 million over the last 10 years in total. Our contribution is made because we wish to assist those countries that are hard hit, and we do so on the basis of our religious principles in order to help all those who are in need of assistance, regardless of their race or any other distinguishing feature. Wars are raging, you have natural disasters, so we need clear will at the international level in order to address these crises. We would like to express our sadness in light of what was set forth in the latest HCR's report, alarming, staggering figures, more than 114 million displaced persons and refugees. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Palestinian people, brotherly people, is experiencing a tragic situation of forced displacement and constant violence at the hands of the Israeli occupier. We strongly condemn this. It is unacceptable, and we would like to call upon the international community to act without delay in order to bring about a ceasefire and open up the crossing points in order to provide humanitarian aid in an unhindered way and in order to find a fair solution to the crisis. My country would like to reiterate its firm position of principle. We stand by the Palestinian people, and we will support the Palestinian people until they can recover their full rights and establish a sovereign state on the basis of the international references and also on the basis of the Arab Peace Initiative. Sadly, last week, the UN Security Council proved incapable of adopting a resolution which had garnered the support of a majority of the members of the Security Council and which would have addressed the tragic situation in Gaza. The Security Council also failed to heed the call by the Secretary General, who invoked Article 99. And on the basis of this article, the Secretary General drew attention to the collapse of the international system and the threats that are weighing over international peace and security. We fear that the situation in Gaza is going to worsen even more and that the occupying power will continue to drive the Palestinian people out of their homes. Political efforts remain limited. Efforts to meet the needs of innocent Palestinian people, unarmed people. The Security Council should take all measures to protect civilians from such an egregious, horrific aggression by Israel, and they should do so in the name of international peace and security. Ladies and gentlemen, the state of Kuwait greatly welcomes the role played by the HCR in saving lives and protecting rights and building a better future for refugees, especially as regards education and healthcare. The State of Kuwait would also like to insist on the importance of having an effective international partnership in order to achieve these goals, and there should also be the principle of shared responsibility that is upheld. I would like to once again thank everyone for the convening of this event. Please, peace be with you.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your statement. Je donne maintenant la parole au ministre.
I now give the floor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. I do apologize, says the High Commissioner.
I now give the floor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Sao Tome and Principe, Gareto Espiritu Santo Guadalupe. You have the floor.
Thank you, High Commissioner Filippo Grandi. The Democratic Republic of Sao Tome and Principe has the honor of being present within the framework of the World Refugee Forum to show solidarity with the efforts undertaken by the international community in favor of refugees, stateless people, and internally displaced people, demonstrating the commitment of Sao Tome and Principe government in what we say and do with a view to international peace and security. Mr. High Commissioner, after the 74th Executive Council of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, held in October 2023 in this beautiful capital of Geneva, I had the honor of expressing in full voice the total interest that my country has in favor of the refugee cause. As you know, welcome refugee is not just an act of solidarity, but above all, the transcendence of humanitarian concepts that has been built for decades. Although insufficient, the theme has likely gained in relevance in recent years within the international community due to the expressive dimension of its flows, the disrespect for human dignity, the resurgence of violence in certain areas, despite their condition of extreme vulnerability. Therefore, legal expansion to their protections and elimination of restrictions over the years gained a definition closer to different realities and challenge of refugees in the four corners of the globe. The refugee statute stands out as a dissonant element in the inhumane logic of restrictions, criminalizations, and violence in human mobility. Ladies and gentlemen, the Democratic Republic of Sao Tome and Principe has the honor of announcing the instruments of ratification that attest the completion of the internal procedures aligned with the international legal framework, so the four conventions on refugee, stateless people, and internally displaced people can be deposited on this date. On the other hand, Your Excellency, and without intending to elaborate further, I inform you that my country, Sao Tome and Principe, submitted its pledge to the United Nations High Commissioner on December 1st. These are effective national commitments with a view to achieving the goal of a more peaceful world where human rights and respect, and therefore for their fulfillment, we request concrete actions for the High Commission to achieve them. By listening to Ms. Lazzarini, I got the impression that it was demanding for immediate global actions, immediate global solidarity, and results for yesterday. I thank each of you for your dedication and effort in this collective endeavor. Together we can turn challenge into opportunities and build a sustainable legacy for generations to come. I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Minister, for being concise and also for your pledge. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Je donne maintenant la parole.
I now give the floor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Tunisia, Mr. Nabil Amar. You have the floor, Minister. Thank you, Chairman, High Commissioner, Excellencies. Since the announcement during the first forum in 2019 of its commitment to strengthening peace and security around the world during its mandate on the Security Council for 2020-2021, Tunisia has done its best to multiply actions in order to achieve this. It is against this backdrop and following an initiative of His Excellency the President, Mr. Said, that the UN Security Council adopted in July 2020 Resolution 2532, which aimed to put an immediate end to all hostilities around the world in order to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic and to impose a humanitarian pause of 90 days. Tunisia remains committed to this, including during its mandate of the Peace and Security Council of the African Union for 2022-2024. Tunisia would also like to announce its adherence to the multi-party commitment to address the root causes and prevent conflicts and build peace. And we would like to thank Egypt, Norway, Colombia, and the UN, who spearheaded this initiative. High Commissioner, despite the unprecedented increase of refugee and migrant flows, Tunisia remains committed to upholding all its international obligations in the field of migration and humanitarian law. We call on UN specialized agencies to also fully assume their role, which is to assist these refugees and migrants and ensure that their fundamental needs are met. In cooperation with the Tunisian Red Crescent, the Tunisian authorities have spared no effort to meet the needs of migrants by providing them with necessary medical care and to enable them to return to their countries of origin. I would like to take this opportunity to renew Tunisia's call to address this issue through a collective and global approach, in particular following the process that was launched during the International Conference on Migration, which took place in July in Rome. We also call for an effort to fight disinformation and the exploitation of these vulnerable persons who are victims of organized crime networks and human trafficking. We must try and prevent criminal organizations from exploiting their vulnerability. We cannot discuss the question of refugees without speaking about what is happening in the occupied Palestinian territories, in particular the Gaza Strip, where we're seeing a disastrous humanitarian situation which has driven more than 1.6 million people out of their homes. Most of these are refugees, and this is done in violation of the provisions of the Geneva Conventions, the principles of international humanitarian law, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In the face of these crimes committed by the occupying army, Tunisia reiterates its call for an immediate ceasefire, access for humanitarian aid, and the lifting of the blockade. Thank you. Thank you very much for your statement and commitments, Minister. I now have the honour of giving the floor to the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Burkina Faso, Ms. Olivia Rwamba. You have the floor, Madam. Thank you very much, Chairman. Chairman, dear High Commissioner Filippo Grandi, allow me at the outset to, on behalf of His Excellency Captain Ibrahim Traoré, President of the Transition Head of State, a warm greeting from the people and government of Burkina Faso to all of our humanitarian partners who are here to express their solidarity towards refugees and host countries. Burkina Faso would like to thank the co-conveners of this event. We'd also like to commend the Swiss government and the HCR, which have pulled out all the stops to give this event the vibrancy it needs. Chairman, from the adoption of the Global Compact in 2018 to this current edition of the Forum, going through the first Forum and the high-level meeting on the implementation of the Compact in 2021, Burkina Faso has always been present in order to express its commitment to the principle of fair sharing of burden and responsibilities in hosting and supporting refugees around the world. During the first Forum, Burkina Faso had made 6 major commitments. To date, the implementation of these is satisfactory as regards the issuance of civil status documents and ID documents for displaced persons and refugees. We have also created healthcare centres and secondary civil registry offices, which are all up and running. Moreover, we have created income-generating activities and production and processing units for refugees and internally displaced persons. There have also been donations of food and cash, which have enabled 122,517 poor households to reduce their dependence and vulnerability. Moreover, my country can take pride in the regular organizing of the meetings of the Tripartite Commission Burkina Faso, Mali, UNHCR, which was established in 2015 and which so far has enabled more than 5,365 Malian refugees to return to their countries. Regarding the effectiveness of commitments under the high-level segment on statelessness, several measures have been taken in Burkina Faso, including a revision of our family code in order to address the question of nationality and the national transposition of the 1954 Convention on the Status of Stateless Persons. Also, we are drawing up bills on a unique identifier, on civil status and the status of stateless persons in Burkina Faso. My country would like to welcome and commend the ongoing efforts to ensure an effective implementation of all its commitments, which are made, it must be said, in a very difficult humanitarian and security context because of terrorism. For the 2023-2027 period, the government of Burkina Faso has prepared 4 large commitments. During this period, my country will strive to improve its national legal framework on handling refugees, stateless persons, and IDPs. We will strive to improve access to civil status documents and ID documents for refugees and displaced persons. We will promote the mechanisms for ensuring harmonious coexistence and for consolidating peaceful coexistence, and we will also promote the inclusion of refugees and internally displaced persons in our societies. President, as we commit to tackling these challenges and as we commit to contributing to attaining the goals enshrined in the Global Compact on Refugees, my country remains aware that this can only be achieved with cooperation from all stakeholders. That is why, on behalf of the Burkina Faso government, I call on all our bilateral and multilateral partners to continue their efforts to assist Burkina Faso in rising to these multiple challenges. This appeal also extends to all those humanitarian actors who are working along the same lines as our government. We should pool our strengths and pool our efforts in order to achieve the expected results by 2027. President, I would like to conclude by highlighting the difficult context in which we operate in Burkina Faso, and I would like to pay tribute to the efforts of the HCR's office in Burkina Faso. You are our allies on the ground. Thank you for your invaluable support. We'd like to reaffirm our commitment to international cooperation and our faith in active solidarity from all humanitarian stakeholders. I would like to express the wish that the joint efforts of all will contribute to a better future for displaced persons and will lead to a world of peace and security. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la...
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. Might I recall to everyone that we must respect the 3 minutes of speaker's time. I have the honor now of giving the floor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Côte d'Ivoire. Kakou Ouadjalion, Adam, you have the floor. I apologize. The Minister has not been able to travel, so I'm making this statement on behalf of the Minister. Mr. High Commissioner, I would like, on behalf of His Excellency Mr. Alassane Ouattara, the President of Côte d'Ivoire, commend you for the immaculate conduct of this work in the second Global Forum on Refugees, and convey to you respectfully the thanks of Mr. Filippo Grandi, the High Commissioner for Refugees, as well as the state and co-conveners. This forum allows us to take stock of the implementation of the commitments and initiatives made at the Forum of 2019. This is also the right time for stakeholders to announce concrete commitments and contributions. Côte d'Ivoire, at the first forum, made important commitments to support the stateless and refugees. As for refugees, my country has submitted ID documentations with biometric data. and universal health care coverage cards in order to facilitate access of children to educational system through secondary education without discrimination, as well as to quality, low-cost quality health care. My country, working with the High Commissioner's Office and the and other countries in the West African sub-region, has worked in these areas. We have spared no effort to bear in mind the commitments, the centerpiece of which has been the invocation of the clause for the cessation of refugee status for Ivorian refugee. As regards statelessness, our country has adopted a national plan for the eradication of statelessness. We have worked to operationalize the national procedure for the recognition of the status of statelessness. We have made qualitative and quantitative steps to identify those who risk statelessness. Our government has also moved forward provisions to grant Ivorian nationality to children of parents that are unknown, that is to say the parents, or that have not been able, or that are born in our territory. We'd like to ensure that we have efforts underway within our code of nationality. We will in the future be taking our part through the effective implementation of the Global Compact for Refugees. We are looking to operationalize or put into practice the law on refugees adopted in June 2023 to deliver travel documents to refugees at the same cost as our nationals, to deliver universal health care cards to some 500,000 asylum seekers from neighboring countries, facilitate access for refugees to public universities as on equal footing with their nationalities, adopt measures on the status of stateless to identify solutions to allow for the acquisition of citizenship to the stateless in situ, and also to become a member of the Global Alliance in order to put it into statelessness and to be a part of the Solution Seeker program. Thank you.
Or to the Federal Minister for Economic Cooperation and Development of Germany, Svenja Schulz. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, High Commissioner. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. What has changed for refugees and host communities since the first Global Refugee Forum in 2019? The Global Compact for Refugees was designed to improve burden and responsibility sharing, enhance the self-reliance of refugees, and increase access to solutions. And yes, we have made great strides. And yet, in spite of this, enormous challenges remain for the people who are on the move and for countries who are hosting them. Being both a host and a donor country, Germany understands the need for urgent action and for more global solidarity. We therefore recommit to the GCR objectives, and we urge all member states, let us not lose the momentum. Let us intensify our efforts and solidarity. Germany has contributing to this in a number of ways. As a part of our peace-building efforts, we seek to address conflict and violence as root causes of displacement. In the context of climate action, we support host countries in responding to human mobility, and we promote a refugee-inclusive climate policy. Regarding education, economic inclusion, and social protection, we support host countries' efforts to systematically include refugees, especially children, in national systems, and we increase their self-reliance so that refugees can make valuable contributions to their host communities. And as part of our feminist foreign and development policy, we seek to strengthen the resilience of women and girls on the move. Our efforts can only be effective if refugees are involved, and we therefore pledge to improve the meaningful participation of refugees, including in policy decisions. And I'm delighted that Karvar Patrak from Afghanistan has joined my delegation as an official refugee delegate. Today, we, the international community, are setting the course for the next 4 years of support for refugees and their host communities, and Germany will remain a committed partner in this joint effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear Minister. It's now my pleasure to give the chair to my co-host, Ambassador Juliette Tony of the Permanent Mission of Switzerland. Ambassador, you have the chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. High Commissioner. I start by appealing all the delegation to make their remarks within the 3 minutes which are allotted. It's very much appreciated so that we can finish on time with the list of all the delegations. So now I would like to give the floor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of South Sudan, Honorable James Peter Morgan. Thank you.
Correction, Minister of Interior, the Republic of South Sudan, Angelina Teng. Thank you, co-host, the High Commissioner and the Ambassador of Switzerland. I take this opportunity on behalf of my government of the Republic of South Sudan to express our gratitude to be part of this second Global Refugee Forum. This forum provides a crucial platform for reflection on the progress of the last 4 years, also an opportunity for planning for the next 4 years. In alignment with the Global Compact on Refugees, I wish to reiterate that South Sudan remains committed to delivering on its pledges towards finding comprehensive, durable solutions to the root causes of displacement. This is actually enshrined in the agreement of the revitalized agreement of the resolution of the conflict in the Republic of South Sudan, Chapter 3 of the agreement. This Chapter 3 focuses on enhancing humanitarian linkages to development and peace. Also, as the world continues to be impacted by climate crisis, South Sudan experienced multiple complex emergencies due to frequent floods, prolonged dry spells, and drought, food insecurity, sporadic conflicts in some parts of the country, causing massive displacement. The eruption of the crisis in Sudan in April 2023 also produced a number of refugees. Almost 500,000 people flocked into South Sudan. Over 70,000 of them are refugees Sudanese. The rest are South Sudanese returning forcefully. Every day, 2,000 people cross our border from the Sudan, while 2.3 million South Sudanese continue to be refugees in the neighboring countries. Despite effort made by the government and our open door policy that allows people to enter, the government continued to provide lines to refugees and access to school, but humanitarian assistance has drastically reduced. The government has endorsed a national durable solution strategy and plan of action for refugees, IDPs, returnees, and host communities. This approach for short-term and long-term sustainable development and peace and stability in the country. These durable solutions are encompassed in the pledges that I'm about to make on behalf of my government. Number one, peace building and implementation of peace agreement. This creating conditions for sustainable return, peace building efforts, implementation of the agreement, and the continuous effort for achieving peace in the Republic of Sudan. Education, enhance access to quality education for refugees and host communities. We are already allowing Sudanese students actually to enter our schools, and we allow them this year, we gave them free access, they sat the school examination. Also, jobs and livelihoods, expanding economic opportunities in refugee hosting areas, climate environment, providing sustainable solutions, and strengthening climate resilience for refugees and host communities. This will include also trying to look for opportunities to access climate funding, statelessness, adopting international standards to prevent statelessness by 2027, protection and capacity, strengthening the asylum system and documentation. Our commitment to creating an environment that allows the refugees, returnees, and internally displaced to coexist in a peaceful environment with dignity continues. So in order to achieve that, we can only achieve those goals in partnership with our usual international partners, which I would want to here thank, and particularly UNHCR, other UN agencies, and other partners who have always worked with us, and we continue to look forward to work closely with them. I take the opportunity to once more appreciate the co-host for this event. I would want to add our voice for a call for a humanitarian ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Minister, and thank you for the pledges also that you made. Now, I would like to give the floor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates of the State of Palestine, His Excellency Dr. Riyad Maliki. You have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, High Commissioner. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, today the Global Refugee Forum stands as a testament to the international community's commitment to addressing the complex challenges faced by refugees and their host communities worldwide. It stands as a platform where nations unite, not merely in diplomatic discourse, but in the shared pursuit of providing protection and assistance to ensure the well-being of millions around the world who have been forced to flee their homes and forcibly displaced by war and the gravest violations of human rights. In doing so, we must simultaneously address the root causes of such massive displacement and misery in our world. Today, among 114 million refugees worldwide, there are more than 7 million Palestinian refugees, 5.9 million of them registered with UNRWA. More than 1.5 million of our refugees are in Gaza Strip, representing 70% of the population. Regrettably, in the absence of a just solution, Israel persists with its apartheid regime, imposing over 56 years illegal colonial occupation, exacerbated by 16 years of blockade on Gaza and over 75 years of displacement and dispossession in an ongoing Nakba, including denial of the right to self-determination of our people and the right of the Palestinian refugees to return. Palestine refugees are tragically in their 7th generation of displacement, making them one of the most protracted refugee crises in the world. Excellencies, what is happening in Gaza today is a part of the ongoing ethnic cleansing that Palestinians have been subjected to for the last 75 years. And the past 68 days of Israel's aggression on Gaza, the most recent and most barbaric episode in this ongoing injustice. As we speak, the forced displacement of Palestinians continues. More than 1.9 million Palestinians have been forcibly displaced by Israel's deadly and destructive aggression. In Gaza now, there is a daughter mourning the death of her parents, a wounded child that has been left without a single family member, a father that is desperately looking for his children under the rubble, a mother holding a bag of the shreds of her child body, searching for a place to bury them. A scene that repeats itself everywhere and every day in Gaza now. Amidst this ongoing genocide in Gaza, Palestinians who are not condemned to be killed by Israeli bombs and missiles or starvation are once again suffer forced displacement. As of today, more than 20,000 Palestinians have been killed. Their hopes, dreams, and the chance to live for another day were annihilated. More than 8,000 children were stripped of their childhood, brutally killed by both cruel occupation and by the silence of the world's governments, even as millions in streets of world capitals calling for an end of this slaughter. 1.9 million Palestinians have been displaced. Many of them were displaced twice and for 3 times, forced to flee their homes in fear, desperately trying to save their lives. Hundreds of thousands sheltered in UN schools or forced to live in tents or in the streets amid dehumanizing conditions. How can it be that with all this carnage be perpetrated against a defenseless civilian population, the world failed to achieve a ceasefire? With such failure, humanity falls and human rights are shredded. Excellencies, Palestine's refugees have one hope, one dream and one right, the right to return to their homes to live in freedom, dignity and peace, and we should help and ensure the achievement of this goal. The right of our people to return is an individual and a collective right intrinsically linked to the exercise of right to self-determination of 14 million Palestinians worldwide. Their right to return does not lapse with the passage of time, no matter how long their exile. It is the right of all refugees around the world to return to their place of origin. From this podium, Your Excellencies, we reiterate our call on the international community to demand and ensure an immediate end to Israel's genocidal war and aggression on the Palestinian people, international protection for our people under occupation in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, and to stop the ongoing forced displacement on the Palestinian people. We also reiterate our urgent appeal to the international community to support and ensure sustainable, sufficient, and uninterrupted assistance for UNRWA. Addressing UNRWA's chronic underfunding is crucial amid this genocidal aggression, prolonged occupation, rising needs, and inhumane blockade of humanitarian aid as a result of the Israeli siege on Gaza. Excellencies, we urge you to rise to your humanitarian obligations equally with your political and legal obligations. As we work to ensure all refugees' welfare and dignity, let us also work to address the root causes and to achieve a just and peaceful solution to the question of Palestine by ending the illegal Israeli occupation and fulfilling the Palestinian people's inalienable rights, for including to self-determination and the materialization of the independent state of Palestine with East Jerusalem as capital, and the return of Palestinian refugees,
I would have to
as all
ask
refugees
you to
in the
conclude.
world are entitled to. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for concluding, and I reiterate my request to limit your intervention to 3 minutes. Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Hungary, His Excellency Mr. Peter Szijjártó.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, dear High Commissioner, Ambassador. Given our geography, Hungary has been under double pressure since our eastern neighboring country is Ukraine, which has been in war for more than 1.5 years now. And from the south, we are protecting the external border of the European Union and the Schengen area at the most busy migratory route towards Europe. So therefore, Hungary can be considered as the best example to show how to respect international law in this regard. And the international law speaks very clearly. Those who are fleeing from war, they do have the right to stay on the territory of the first safe country, but no one has the right to go across territories of many safe countries based on a unilaterally chosen location somewhere in the world. Therefore, I do believe that we should leave hypocrisy behind, and we should start speaking really clearly that there is a clear and obvious difference between refugees and illegal migrants. So whoever stays on the territory of the first safe country must be considered as a refugee, and he or she does definitely have the right to stay there. But those who cross territories of more safe countries in a row by violating their borders must be considered as illegal migrants, and they must be stopped. And we in Hungary act accordingly. I mean according to the international law. We do allow all refugees to enter the territory of our country. That's why we have received more than 1 million refugees from Ukraine, from our neighboring country. We have been taking good care of them. We have been granting them with equal access to our healthcare and education systems, as there are more than 1,500 schools and kindergartens in Hungary which have been enrolling refugee kids and students. But in the meantime, we do our best to stop all illegal migrants at our southern border. Last year, 275,000. This year, we are close to 200,000 because for them, we are definitely not the first safe country. And I have to report to you that unfortunately, many of them do behave very aggressively. Many of them do carry weapons, and many of them do shoot at our border guards. And many of them make the life of the people living around the border, both sides, really unbearable. And for the sake of security of the country and the citizens of Hungary, we will never let these people enter the territory of our country. So to conclude, Mr. Ambassador, to comply with your expectation regarding the time limit, I'd like to say that in order to overcome those very serious challenges which have been on our agenda, we have to apply honesty finally, and we have to admit that there's a clear difference between those who are refugees and those who are illegal migrants. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I now give the floor to the Minister for Migration of Sweden, Her Excellencies Mrs. Maria Malmer Stenegard. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, High Commissioner, Excellencies. It is my honor to speak before you here today, and I am proud to announce that Sweden has decided to join the following pledges: economic inclusion and social protection, gender equality and protection from gender-based violence, the situational pledge on Rohingya refugees, the asylum capacity support group, resettlement, and finally, the pledge on unearmarked humanitarian funding for refugee situations. In addition, I am pleased to announce that Sweden has decided to allocate 57.6 million Swedish crowns of our core support to UNHCR's response in Lebanon. Sweden remains UNHCR's #1 provider of unearmarked and multi-year support. We encourage donors to join the pledge on unearmarked funding and to increase such support. It enables organizations to respond from day one in emergency situations. It lays the ground for adequate reception and protection and can prevent onward irregular movement. Resettlement remains a safe and organized way to offer international protection to refugees in the most vulnerable situations. This year, Sweden continued our engagement, upholding a quota of 900 refugees. Priority has been given to women, girls, and LGBTQI refugees. As a long-standing resettlement country, Sweden wishes to encourage more states to follow suit. Sweden intends to continue with annual resettlement of quota refugees pending parliamentary approval. We also pledge towards Asylum Capacity Support Group to strengthen asylum capacity in host countries. Since the last forum, Sweden has engaged globally with partners on several pledges and projects ranging from refugee inclusion in education to access to financial services. Now, we strengthen focus on self-reliance and opportunities for productive employment, for example, in Kenya and Uganda. Access to sexual and reproductive health services is part of our gender equality pledge. In addition, Sweden seeks to further increase the focus on migration and displacement in our development cooperation. We do this as the number of displaced in the world continues to rise and asylum systems become increasingly burdened. To safeguard protection space, we must also think beyond traditional solutions. We could learn from initiatives en route that serve to ensure early identification, recognition, and protection of refugees, but also to provide alternatives to dangerous journeys and to prevent human trafficking. UNHCR, with its unique mandate, has an important role in this process. In closing, Sweden wishes to pay tribute to host countries and their great contributions. Sweden's commitment is steadfast to the Global Compact and to safeguarding international protection. I thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Minister, and thank you very much for the pledges of Sweden also. Now I turn to the Minister for Social Protection of Estonia, Her Excellencies, Mrs. Signe Riisalo. You have the floor.
Mr. Chair, thank you, High Commissioner. Estonia commends UNHCR for its tireless work helping the world's most vulnerable in increasingly complex humanitarian context around the world. Unfortunately, we see humanitarian needs grow year by year with new crises joins existing ones. The number of people forcibly displaced continues to rise constantly. We remain deeply concerned about this trend as well as the shrinking humanitarian space due to the lack of compliance with international humanitarian law. Estonia remains deeply distressed about numerous crises around the globe, such as in Ukraine, Sudan, Armenia, as well as Afghanistan, Syria, Ethiopia, the Sahel region, Myanmar, and Yemen. Much of the increase in the number of displaced in recent years has been created by Russia's ongoing war of aggression. Russia's brutal and unjustified attack on Ukraine has forced 6.3 million people to become refugees abroad and displaced 3.7 million inside Ukraine, most of them women and children. I would like to highlight Russia's deliberate policy of deporting Ukrainian children to Russia and Belarus and forceful adoption into Russians' family. Furthermore, the rise in food insecurity, rising food prices and energy crisis are a real and direct consequence of Russian aggression, affecting millions of already vulnerable people around the world. We must do our share to support those in need. Refugee response is a global responsibility and focus needs to remain on places of origin, transit and destination. Estonia, as a refugee hosting country and a long-time donor, is doing its part to help. Today, the refugees with temporary protection from Ukraine make up to 3% of our whole population. For Estonia, this is the first refugee crisis of such extent. Nonetheless, we share the burden at home, in the region and globally. We appreciate the UNHCR supports responding the needs of Ukrainian refugees in Estonia and the wider region. We are putting our lessons learned into practice and pledge today to improve our mental health and psychosocial support, as well as employment support for refugees. Estonia continues to be a predictable donor, providing unmarked contribution to allow UNHCR to respond effectively to the many crises around the world. Most recently, we provided support to elevate the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Sudan and in neighboring countries. Protection of the most vulnerable, such as IDP, women and children, remains a priority for Estonia. Today, we pledge to support projects providing education and psychosocial support to refugees in the Middle East, in Ukraine and its neighboring countries. Moreover, we pledge to support developing cross-border e-health solutions, such as digital immunization certificates. The dire humanitarian situation worldwide demands new solutions, such as innovative projects joining together humanitarian development and peace efforts. The Global Refugee Forum is as timely as can be. We need to act better, quicker, and more effectively. The collective pledge made here have the power to bring a real change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Minister, and thank you for the pledges. I now give the floor to the Minister of Interior, Kurdistan Regional Government of Iraq, His Excellencies, Mr. Reba Ahmed Khalid. You have the floor.
In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate, Mr. President, Your Excellency, Mr. High Commissioner and Distinguished Commissioner for UNRWA, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Iraq welcomes the convening of the second forum. We welcome the goals it seeks to achieve. We value the efforts of UNRWA and UNHCR to organize this forum. It is one of the practical steps and seminal ones to share burdens and to achieve the goals set out in the Global Compact for Refugees adopted by the UNGA in 2018, which calls for their protection and assistance, and to support countries and societies hosting them and to reduce the burden. And while we celebrate the 75th of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we must also think of the situation of refugees and their living conditions, those forced to be displaced from their homes because of conflict or natural disasters. This forum is an important opportunity for us to reaffirm our commitment to support the human rights of refugees and to assist them to face the challenges they encounter. Mr. President, very difficult circumstances faced by Iraq were not easy at all. We faced several phases of displacement internally. In addition, influx of refugees from neighboring countries. Iraq hosts around 270,000 refugees from Syria and tens of thousands from other countries in the Kurdistan regions. They are spread out in 10 camps and in the neighboring countries of the region. In Iraq, we are proud of the achievements of Kurdistan as we succeeded in dealing with internal displacement and refugee influx. In our country, the federal institutions and the Kurdistan institutions cooperate with the international community and other organizations in guaranteeing that refugees on our territory enjoy their basic rights in health, education, and basic services. We have also provided security protection so that they may reside in Iraq according to international regulation until appropriate conditions are available for them to return voluntarily to their home countries. This is a moral commitment stipulated in the Iraqi constitution of 2005, and more specifically, the forced return of refugees. Iraq is amongst the first countries which had established a law for the protection of refugees through the political refugee legislation of 1959. This has been replaced by another law in 1971, which is in force until now, and which provides refugees greater protection, including property, right to property. However, following the changes in the question of asylum, we have taken steps on the legislative front and sought to overcome gaps in the law to guarantee this right of asylum. In Kurdistan and in cooperation with the High Commission for Refugees, we have issued special instructions as to the ways to deal with asylum requests. From this forum, we declare our commitment to continue in this policy, and as long as resources are available to respond to the situation of refugees in our land. First and foremost, refugees shall continue to enjoy all the services provided, such as health and education, through the specialized institutions of the Ministry of Health and Education on the federal and local level. The Ministry of Interior in Iraq is drafting legislation to organize right of asylum. We have set up a specialized committee to draft a law, and this shall be achieved through coordination with the High Commission of Refugees and experts in university. Field visits will be undertaken to camps. We shall continue to provide education for refugees in Kurdistan so that their children and asylum seekers may obtain sound education on an equal footing with local children. This should enable the refugees to adapt during their period of refuge, which may last a longer period. Iraq wishes to express its sincere concern as to the increased numbers of refugees in the world due to crises and climate change, especially wars in the Middle East, and especially in the Gaza sector in Palestine. And our fears to convert Palestinian refugees into forced refugees. Therefore, we call for a ceasefire and the opening of humanitarian passages and to attempt to rebuild the region through a fund to rebuild the devastated areas in Gaza. All this depends on a cease to war and the establishment economic solutions. Chair interrupts the speaker. We also call for us to combat extreme ideologies and to tackle the basic reasons for internal displacement and refuge through peaceful coexistence between nations and the various social components, and to accept the other as he is and not as we want him to be. Finally, allow me to congratulate the High Commission for Refugees for its success in convening this gathering, which reflects international concern for refugees. We hope that you shall continue to support Iraq. It is an immense responsibility. No single nation can deal with it alone without international support on the basis of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I reiterate my request that we stick to 3 minutes, basically to 3 minutes. Thank you very much. And now I give the floor to the Vice Minister for Multilateral Affairs of Mexico, His Excellency Joel Hernandez Garcia. You have the floor, sir.
Muchas gracias, representante alterno de Suiza.
Thank you very much, distinguished High Commissioner. The emergence of new conflicts, the deepening of inequalities, the impacts of climate change and the broadening of violence and insecurity have given rise to unprecedented movements of people. These trends require an urgent, comprehensive response with co-responsibility and coordinated at the international level. That's where the importance of this forum becomes evident. Bearing in mind the tragic events in the Gaza Strip, Mexico will increase by 30% its financial contribution to UNRWA. Distinguished colleagues, the Global Compact on Refugees should inspire us to approach the realities of a world in which 114 million people have decided to leave their homes. As an international community, we need to rise to these challenges and be up to them. In Mexico, we are experiencing a very complex human mobility panorama. Because of our geographic situation, we get migratory flows that are very significant in terms of size and which come from all corners of the globe. Mexico today is the third country in terms of the number of new requests for refugee status. Over the last 10 years, we have gone from 1,300 requests to 150,000, which is the number that we expect to close 2023 with. In keeping with its humanist vocation and with the invaluable support of the UNHCR, Mexico is making extraordinary efforts to address the situation. That is why today we will announce 8 new commitments with actions at the regional, national, local level, and which are the result of inclusive consultations carried out by COMA and the UNHCR. These commitments were already listed in a comprehensive way, and today I would like to highlight the following aspects. First of all, we will drive forward strategies and tools that ensure that we provide fair processing for refugee applications without discrimination and in an efficient way in order to reduce the time required for that. Secondly, we will foster meaningful participation spaces through the mechanism between our government, UNHCR, civil society, and organizations of refugees. Thirdly, we will continue to promote local integration programs for refugees to address their needs in the fields of healthcare, education, employment, and by articulating efforts across 3 levels of government. Fourthly, from a regional perspective, we will ensure that we have institutional capacity and that we can handle refugee cases through the comprehensive regional framework for protection and solution, better known as MERPS. Then the authorities of the states of Baja California, Guanajuato, and Nuevo León, as well as the city of Tapachula, will make specific commitments to promote inclusion, empowerment, to uphold the rights of refugees, and create mechanisms for addressing the needs of people in need of international protection. Through the joint will around the compact, it will be possible to promote protection and broaden solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Minister. Now I give the floor to Deputy Minister from Lesotho, Honorable Justice Ntomeng Majara. You have the floor, sir.
Mr. High Commissioner, Excellencies,
Madam.
Thank you for the opportunity to address this gathering on behalf of the Kingdom of Lesotho. In 2019, Lesotho made concrete pledges in areas ranging from law reform to prevent statelessness by enacting a bill which will grant nationality to children born in Lesotho who would otherwise be stateless, removal of gender discrimination from nationality laws, establishment of statelessness determination procedures, commitment to conduct and publish a study on statelessness, and to establish evidence-based policies, and provision of land to refugees and asylum seekers for agricultural production and food security. Efforts are underway to finalize the statelessness bill, which will hopefully be enacted in 2024, while the other pledges have been fully achieved. Lesotho is renowned for her hospitality, as well as for being a safe haven to those fleeing persecution. The refugee program has successfully catered for safety and shelter to a significant number of refugees fleeing their home countries. Through a reception center and protection support system, we have provided a secure shelter for these individuals and their families. Lesotho's health centers have also been equipped with civil registry facilities so that new births from refugee families are registered in the civil registry database. Refugees are therefore issued with electronic documents which enable them to access free primary education and free medical care, facilitate employment, and enable them to open small businesses and other income-generating activities. Community integration initiatives have been launched to promote unity and mutual understanding between refugees and their host communities. These endeavors have contributed to a large extent in the decrease in tensions and an enhancement of social cohesion. Further, agricultural and other income-generating activities for refugees are implemented through a project partnership agreement in collaboration with NGOs and the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. The Kingdom of Lesotho has also allocated some arable land for agricultural production for refugees, thus fulfilling another commitment. Unfortunately, the utilization of the land has been hindered by a lack of funding due to inadequate financial resources for purchasing of agricultural equipment, amongst other things. Progress on the preparations for conducting the statelessness study in Lesotho has seen the formulation, review, and dissemination of the terms of reference and a subsequent implementation action plan by key stakeholders. It is expected that early next year, Lesotho will finalize the tripartite agreement with the UNHCR and the Transformation Resource Center, paving way for the commencement of the study. With the assistance of the UNHCR and other UN agencies, Lesotho has completed a study on internally displaced persons, which is intended to inform policy decisions on the issue. The study revealed that there are several factors which contribute to IDPS problems, such as development projects which necessitate resettlement, climate-influenced droughts and floods, as well as music, gang, and illegal mining-infused violence by Basotho in Lesotho and in our only neighbor, South Africa. Lesotho further takes cognizance of the fact that she needs to work on reinforcing the existing legal framework to protect and uphold the rights of refugees, aligning it with international conventions to which she is a state party, and to also review the Refugee Act regarding refugee status determination, thus building on the strides the country has made. Lesotho is currently embarking on constitutional reforms, an exercise which seeks to bring the country's legal framework in tandem with today's demands, challenges, and dynamics. We view this reform process as an opportunity to take the voices of the vulnerable or marginalized groups on board. We therefore wish to make a pledge to this second Global Refugee Forum to place marginalized groups high on the government's agenda and to strengthen the legal framework to protect as well as domesticate the Kampala Convention by the year 2025. In conclusion, the Kingdom of Lesotho would like to commend the work done by the UNHCR throughout the world and to encourage development partners to continue executing their mandates on promoting and protecting the rights of refugees, internally displaced persons, and stateless persons in Lesotho and around the globe. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Prime Minister. And now I give the floor to the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship of Canada, Honorable Mark Miller. You have the floor.
Présidence, délégués distingués.
President, distinguished delegates, Canada's presence here is a reflection of our solidarity with each and every one of you and our support for the fundamental principles of the Convention on the Status of Refugees. We would like to reaffirm our unwavering commitment to the UNHCR as well as the other UN specialized agencies, the Red Cross, local partners and NGOs who work tirelessly to provide vital support and assistance and protection to those who are in desperate need of it and who have ever-growing needs. On behalf of Canada, it is an honor for me to reaffirm our lasting and meaningful commitment to providing funds for vital assistance for displaced persons and for supporting host communities through long-term investments in development. This will help address the root causes of displacement and will contribute to finding sustainable solutions, building the capacity for asylum at the global level while at the same time fostering a better sharing of responsibilities. We recognize the compassion and generosity of the host countries and communities who host a great number of refugees, including children. That is why, in addition to providing funds to the UNHCR and its partners in support of refugees, we will also co-lead the initiative for education for upholding the right to education and including refugee children in educational systems at the national level.
A multi-stakeholder pledge on resettlement. Canada has set significant resettlement targets in line with our humanitarian tradition and commitment to refugee protection. We also continue to innovate in complementary pathways, including refugee labor mobility, with the objective of making our economic mobility pathways pilots permanent. At the cornerstone of our response is our unequivocal commitment to the protection of women, girls, and other marginalized peoples, including LGBTQI+ persons in need. We stand ready to provide refuge and support to those who face persecution and violence because of who they are. Canada's whole of society approach to refugee response extends to our delegation at this forum. I'm joined, and I turn to her now, Sering Tonsor, who has lived experience as a stateless person and deep expertise in protection. The expertise of Ms. Tonsor and individuals like her can only strengthen our ability to address the challenges at hand. I leave her the remaining moments of my speech.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister Miller. Tashidile and greetings. Sering Tonsor, born as a Tibetan stateless refugee in India, I'm honored to have been selected by the Refugee Advisory Network of Canada as a refugee advisor to the Canadian delegation. The Refugee Advisory Network of Canada advocates for long-term solutions and pathways to support refugees, asylum seekers, displaced and stateless individuals, and vulnerable populations to find durable and rights-based solutions. Recognition of the expertise of refugees and funding to refugee-led organizations are vital in strengthening refugee responses at the national, local, and international levels. Refugees are resourceful partners, and together, the scope of response building is meaningful. Let us ensure a historical outcome of this GRF leads to more equitable burden sharing and forging equitable, expedited responses for refugees. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le.
Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you to the Canadian delegation on the whole.
I will now give the floor to Minister Supervisor General King Salman Humanitarian Aid and Relief Center of Saudi Arabia, His Excellency Dr. Abdullah Al-Raber.
Excellencies, greetings. I would like to express my deepest gratitude and appreciation to the organizers for this important forum. Ladies and gentlemen, today we gather in the face of exceptional circumstances and great challenges. Given the escalation in global humanitarian crises, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia prioritizes humanitarian action on both the humanitarian and political levels, collaborating closely with the international community to mitigate conflicts and other emergencies and extend a helping hand to those in need. Sensing its humanitarian responsibilities, the Kingdom works towards alleviating the suffering of refugees in host countries, helping to provide the necessities that allow people to live healthier and more dignified lives. For many decades, Saudi Arabia has generously provided humanitarian aid to refugees around the world. The total aid provided by the Kingdom amounts to more than $1.1 billion to alleviate the hardships and challenges on countries that host refugees. Distinguished guests, with the guidance and support of the leadership of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the percentage of refugees living in the Kingdom has reached 5.5% of the total Saudi population. The Kingdom has provided nearly 1.1 million visitors with free health services and education opportunities, ensuring their integration into Saudi society. Over the last few years, the total amount of support provided by the Kingdom for refugees has exceeded $18.5 billion. Because of the increasing numbers of refugees and displaced persons resulting from the crises that we are witnessing today, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, through the King Salman Humanitarian Aid and Relief Center and in partnership with the UN, international and local organizations, continues to implement diverse projects across all humanitarian sectors, contributing a total of $170 million in funding, including $40 million for the displaced people in Gaza and $10 million to the International Islamic Fund for Refugees. Saudi Arabia also plays an ongoing role in supporting refugees and displaced persons, with approximately 7% of its humanitarian projects over the next 2 years to implement projects specifically in this area. In conclusion, we must recognize the importance of uniting our efforts to address refugee challenges by creating and strengthening our partnerships and providing new initiatives to alleviate suffering. We must support host countries as they seek to provide the best possible conditions for refugees, conditions that support their health, dignity, and safety. We must also work to reduce the growing number of humanitarian violations occurring in crisis situations like that occurring in Gaza, which leads to an increase in the total number of refugees and a decrease in their overall quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I give now the floor to the Minister of Interior of Cyprus, His Excellency Mr. Konstantinos Ioannou. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, High Commissioner, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. In the 4 years that have passed since the first Global Refugee Forum, we have been witnessing unprecedented numbers of forcibly displaced and vulnerable persons. Cyprus shares the concerns about the rising numbers of forcibly displaced persons globally due to persecution, violence, and the resurgence of conflicts worldwide, as well as the adverse effects of climate change. We have witnessed the emergence of new conflicts and the intensification of existing ones. The grave humanitarian situation in Gaza, the raging war against Ukraine, the civil war in Syria, and the conflict in Sudan are but a few examples. Excellencies, Cyprus remains a frontline state with disproportionately large migratory pressures in terms of the size of its population. It has consistently been the member state of the European Union with the highest number of first-time applications for international protection in relation to its population size. I could just give you an indication of the exceptional circumstances we are facing by stating that the number of people with a protection status in Cyprus is more than 5% of the population, whilst at the same time the average in the EU is 1.5%. During the past 5 years, we are called to respond to an enormous increase of 500% in asylum applications. The growth in numbers has put an extraordinary strain on our capacity and a remarkable overall pressure on our reception system. Albeit the challenges and obstacles, Cyprus is continuously at the forefront of its commitments, recognizing the importance of providing support and assistance to those in need, maintaining an efficient and effective management of refugee flows high on our national policy agenda. Cyprus trusts that the second Global Refugee Forum will signify an important stepping stone for all actors to enhance their commitments. Cyprus's own pledges aims at promoting refugees and asylum seekers' integration into our society. Firstly, as regards reception conditions, all necessary actions have been taken to increase the capacity and upgrade the facilities of the current reception and accommodation centres. More specifically, with the help of the EU, we're in the process of developing an additional accommodation centre for families and vulnerable persons to ensure dignified levels of living conditions. Secondly, recognizing the importance of integration as an essential component of well-being, a new intercultural integration strategy has been drafted. The new project takes into consideration the current situation on the island as well as the capacity of the country. Thirdly, a targeted vocational training program is being designed to facilitate access of Ukrainian refugees to the labour markets with specific trainings of upskilling and reskilling. The program will also act as a pilot project for all refugees. As I conclude, I would like to reiterate Cyprus's commitment to the global impact on refugees and to its goals. Moreover, allow me to express my sincere gratitude to UNHCR and to you, High Commissioner, personally, and all your staff for the extraordinary work on the ground in ensuring international protection and safeguarding the rights of refugees and vulnerable persons. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I would like now to give the floor to the Minister of Public Service, Labour and Social Welfare of Zimbabwe, Honorable Julie Moyo. You have the floor.
Co-Chair, High Commissioner, Your Excellencies, my delegation is honored to participate in this second session of the Global Refugee Forum. The top leadership of Zimbabwe, led by President Mnangagwa, lived in all our neighboring countries such as Zambia, Mozambique, Botswana, Tanzania, and further abroad in all continents as a result of the forced displacements by a racist, colonial, and imperial regime that occupied our country. Today, we meet here as a host country with refugees coming from 30 African countries as a result of conflict, a rise in geopolitical tensions, and climate change-induced natural disasters, among other current crises. Following the pledges we made at the first GRF in 2019, the government of Zimbabwe is undertaking the following. One, a functional 50-hectare irrigation scheme benefiting 435 refugees. The government of Zimbabwe has now availed an additional 100 hectares to extend the irrigation scheme to 150 hectares. A demand-driven fishery project that has changed the face of the refugee settlement. A flagship hydroponics project has been established. A community information center that will house an innovation hub is under construction. The government of Zimbabwe has mobilized resources for sustainable support of sporting teams and clubs that are established at the refugee settlement. Most of these teams are now affiliated with national sports associations. Refugees have access to the issuance of identity documents such as birth certificates and identity cards. The government embarked on a mobile registration program to ensure effective registration, and this included refugees. Further to this, the government of Zimbabwe pledges to strengthen self-reliance for refugees, asylum seekers, and the host community by supporting sustainable livelihoods. promote and increase access to tertiary education for refugees, asylum seekers, and the host community by establishing a technical vocational education and training institution at the settlement. Strengthen the inclusion of refugees and asylum seekers in sport and cultural activities by supporting the establishment of state-of-the-art sport and cultural facilities at the refugee settlement. Improve the asylum process in Zimbabwe by strengthening the refugee status determination procedures and national data management system. Strengthen the institutional capacity of our National Civil Registry in order to improve timely access to civil registration and documentation by refugees. Review and update the legal and policy frameworks on refugees and asylum seekers to align them with the international refugee and human rights law. With respect to statelessness, the Constitution of Zimbabwe leaves no room for statelessness. Hence, we commit to undertake a study to establish the evidence of statelessness in Zimbabwe, as well as aligning the Citizenship Act, Birth and Death Registration Act to the Constitution. And finally, at this critical juncture, the international community should now more than ever redouble efforts towards burden and responsibility sharing. The increase in forced displacement means that host countries, many of whom are from developing countries, continue to shoulder the disproportionate burden in the wake of the widening funding gap between the needs and financial resources available. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I now give the floor to the Minister of Interior of the Gambia, Honorable Seyaka Sonko. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chairperson. The High Commissioner of the UNHCR, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. The delegation of the Gambia congratulates the UNHCR for convening the second Global Refugee Forum. We pay tribute to High Commissioner Mr. Filippo Grandi and all esteemed stakeholders for their immense contribution in the field of humanitarian services during the current state of heightened global challenges and conflicts. Excellencies, the protection of refugees is a shared responsibility of all states, and it is a responsibility that the government of the Gambia takes very seriously. In this regard, I wish to assure this August gathering that the Gambia is committed to providing a safe haven for refugees and other persons of concern in their search for appropriate solutions to their predicaments. This commitment informed the establishment of the Gambia Commission for Refugees by an Act of Parliament in 2008 to address and manage the problems of the refugees and other persons of concern in the Gambia. In fulfillment of our international commitment in the protection of refugees and other persons of concern, the Gambia has also ratified the 1954 and 1961 Conventions on Statelessness in 2014, and is working closely with the UNHCR, regional office, and non-government organizations in the realization of its commitment to the reduction and eradication of statelessness. Some of the efforts that have been made towards eradicating or reducing statelessness and finding durable solutions to the plight of protracted refugees include the development of the National Action Plan on Statelessness, the planning and implementation of the study on statelessness and risk of statelessness in the Gambia, participation in the ECOWAS Ministerial Conference in Banjul on the reduction of statelessness held in the Gambia in May 2017. Excellencies, notwithstanding these efforts, there is still a lot of work to be done, especially in the domestication of these conventions within the Gambian nationality laws. Accordingly, the government of Gambia hereby, 1, pledges to assure that no child is born stateless. In that regard, over 95% of children born below 5 years are now registered under the auspices of the Registry of Births and Deaths of the Ministry of Health. 2, commits to amend its nationality law to grant nationality to children born on its territory, including foundlings who would otherwise be stateless. 3, commits to reform our nationality and citizenship provisions in the 1997 Constitution to facilitate naturalization of refugees and stateless persons by the end of 2025. 4, commits to publish a qualitative study to better understand the situation of statelessness groups and individuals living in its territory with a view to finding a solution to their situation. The government of the Gambia, with support from the UNHCR Dakar office, hired a consultant to conduct a survey sometime in 2017. The study was concluded, validated at national level, but is yet to be published. 5, commits to enhance local integration mechanisms and include refugees and stateless persons in basic social plans, strategies, and services. We will facilitate the naturalization and long-term residency of Senegalese refugees in the Gambia and ensure the effective inclusion of refugees, asylum seekers, and stateless persons in social safety nets. The government of the Gambia commits to achieve this by 2025. It commits to ensuring that those who have sought refuge have access to life-saving assistance they deserve, including health care and other opportunities to pursue livelihoods and education that allow them or will enable them to rebuild their lives with dignity and hope for a better future. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to thank the UNHCR for being a reliable partner and for complementing our government's efforts to providing a protective environment to refugees and other persons of concern in the Gambia. I thank you all for your kind attention.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I turn now to... Je passerai la parole.
I now give the floor to the Minister of Cooperation for Development and Large City Policies of Belgium, Her Excellency, Madame Caroline Genet. You have the floor, Madam. Thank you very much.
Dear colleagues, in a world mired in conflict and crisis, innocent civilians continue to pay the price. From Gaza to Ukraine, the DRC, and many forgotten crises, 114 million people around the world are forcibly displaced. Belgium will continue to stand on the side of innocent civilians and in support of international law. The world urgently needs stronger political action to limit human suffering and to work on peace. The Belgian government is committed to the main message of this global compact, to have better burden and responsibility sharing. We come forward with a package of pledges that target refugees in Belgium and in the global south. I believe a strong welfare state is needed to support refugees' rights and to better include them in societies. A welfare state that provides decent public services, education, healthcare, and access to the labor market, both to refugees and to host communities. That's why we will continue to support partner countries in the global south that are hosting a lot of refugees and are contributing to the resilience of refugees by including them in their national systems of healthcare, education, and labor markets. We will also remain committed to flexible funding for UNHCR to enable you to deploy resources where the needs for refugee protection are highest. As Minister of Development Cooperation, I'm particularly fond of our pledge to include refugees, IDPs, and returnees more systematically in development cooperation. This represents a shift in mindset and way of working. In the past, we approached situations of forced displacement from a pure humanitarian lens. Of course, humanitarian aid stays essential to save lives and to protect forcibly displaced people. But development cooperation needs to step it up. We see that humanitarian crises worldwide are becoming protracted and that displacement lasts always longer. On average, an IDP is away from home for 10 years and a refugee on average for 20 years. We can and may not leave all these people in the waiting room of life. We must ensure that they can participate in society to the fullest, that they can get a proper education, to develop their talents, to get a decent job, or to start a business. In short, to contribute in a positive way to their new society. And Belgium will support partner countries to achieve this. Belgium will also continue to work on resettlement and so-called complementary pathways. We want to further develop the role of citizens in supporting asylum seekers through community sponsorship and are committed to the economic inclusion of refugees both in the Global South and in our own country. Belgium continues the fight against statelessness through new legislation, and finally, we will also continue to work on the quality of guardianship for unaccompanied minors. Thank you so much.
Merci, Madame la Ministre.
Thank you, Madam Minister, and thank you for your commitments as well.
And now the floor to the Minister of State for International Cooperation of Qatar, His Excellency, Mrs. Loloa Rachid Al-Qatar. You have the floor.
Thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to express my pleasure in participating in this forum. I hope that we will all collaboratively strive towards fulfilling the goals of the global impact on refugees. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Filippo Grandi and the relevant UN bodies who are sounding the alarms to what is happening today in Gaza. Mr. President, the State of Qatar collaborates with the UNHCR and other organizations to protect and support displaced persons. From 2014 to 2022, Qatar's support to refugees and the High Commissioner is over $670 million. Qatar is currently chairing the support platform for the Solutions Strategy for Afghan Refugees and hosts the UNHCR office in Doha at the United Nations House. Mr. President, Qatar is finalizing a multi-year funding plan involving the UN and many of its agencies and programs. The plan includes support for the core resources of the UNHCR, totaling $8 million for 2023-2024. Qatar has pledged $50 million towards Sudan, from which $10 million is dedicated to Sudanese refugees. $2 million of this amount will be allocated to the UNHCR. For Afghan refugees, Qatar facilitated the safe evacuation of more than 130,000 Afghan refugees since 2021 and pledged $75 million to support Afghans. Qatar has also recently pledged $100 million for the Ukrainian people, including refugees, and an additional $75 million for the Syrian people to make Qatar's total contribution for the brotherly people of Syria more than $2 billion in the past decade. Mr. President, I would like to take this opportunity to emphasize the need to find a just, lasting, and holistic solution to the suffering of more than 5.9 million registered Palestinian refugees. The current war against the civilian population and children of Gaza constitute violations of international humanitarian law and international human rights law. In particular, these actions constitute violations of the Fourth Geneva Convention, which prevents collective punishment, and the Hague regulations, which require the protection of the civilians. The additional protocols to the Geneva Conventions prohibit indiscriminate attacks on the civilian people or population. Through its mediation, Qatar and Egypt have secured a humanitarian pause. Qatar has just provided $80 million as core funding for UNRWA for 2023 and 2024. Today, I announce Qatar's new pledge of $50 million as initial humanitarian assistance package for Gaza, aimed at refugees, displaced people, injured people, orphans, and others affected by the ongoing aggression. Moreover, I am pleased to announce that Education Above All Foundation in Qatar, through its Al Fakhura program, will provide 100 university scholarships to Palestinian students from Gaza. As an occupying power, Israel is under an obligation to ensure the protection, welfare, and human rights of the civilian population under its occupation. Article 33 of the Fourth Geneva Convention provides that collective punishment is prohibited, and Article 59 places an obligation on the occupier to facilitate relief efforts and relief schemes if the territory is inadequately supplied. We must demand accountability to ensure that attacks against civilians do not reoccur, and we must ensure a commitment to a sustainable solution that honors the legitimate rights of the indigenous people of Palestine as recognized by international law, including the right to self-determination, the right to an independent state, and the right of return. In conclusion, the State of Qatar reaffirms its commitment to continue enhancing its relationship and strategic partnerships with the UNHCR and to provide the necessary support to efforts aimed at protecting and assisting refugees. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mrs. Minister, and thank you so much for the pledges. Maintenant, je passerai
I would like to now give the floor to the Minister of Social Affairs, of Solidarity and Humanitarian Action of the Republic of the Congo, Her Excellency Madame Irene Marie-Cécile Mboku Kimbatsa. The floor is yours. Mr. High Commissioner of the United Nations for Refugees, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, distinguished heads of delegation, ladies and gentlemen, representatives of the refugees, the Republic of the Congo, through me, would like to hail this holding of the second GRF. It is being held in an unfortunate context marked by a meaningful increase in forcibly displaced individuals beyond the borders of their countries of origin. I cannot continue with my remarks without commending and thanking Swiss warmly, the host country for this forum. At the same time, the High Commissioner for Refugees and the co-conveners, I congratulate you all for the sterling conduct of this event. It brings decisive momentum towards the strengthening of international solidarity to the benefit of refugees. Over recent years, my country has registered a significant increase in people seeking protection. We have been able to implement numerous commitments taken at the first forum. We plan to continue this despite the financial difficulties that our country faces. This has been accentuated since 2019 as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, in this forum, my country will be taking the following commitments. 1, to draft and adopt a national strategy for asylum seekers. The idea is to sketch out a vision of refugee care and assistance for the years that lie ahead. 2, to continue with the care for refugees in our national plan for development. 3, to launch our national committee for the eradication of statelessness in 2024. 4, to finalize our quantitative and qualitative study on the stateless by 2026. 5, to continue our awareness raising among the population in order to encourage birth registry for every birth. 6, in the end, to continue our legislative reform in the area of nationalities. Ladies and gentlemen, as we understand the current humanitarian emergencies, I would invite the High Commissioner for Refugees, the other humanitarian actors and donors to also turn their view toward the situation of refugees and asylum seekers in the Republic of the Congo. I thank you kindly. Thank you, Madam Minister. I should now like to give the floor to the Chief of Staff, Migration Service of Azerbaijan.
His Excellency Mr. Vural Husseinov, and this will be the last intervention of this afternoon because we have to stop close to 5:30 this afternoon to give enough space for the session related to pledges. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Dear High Commissioner, Excellencies, I am pleased to attend the second Global Refugee Forum, which provides opportunity to discuss the progress made since the first GRF, as well as to review our activities on practical implementation of the Global Compact on Refugees, including pledging initiative. I'm delighted to note that Azerbaijan has demonstrated remarkable approach by fully implementing all the voluntary pledges taken during the first GRF, as well as high-level segment on statelessness. Thus, all the necessary measures were taken for refugees and asylum seekers, facilitated and free access to healthcare services, labor market, as well as government-funded higher education opportunities. In addition, more than 80% of identified stateless persons have been naturalized, with the rest being under the process of review. Furthermore, I would like to proudly state that after the liberation of occupied territories in 2020, Azerbaijan stepped into a new stage in managing consequences of forced displacement, which our country suffered for more than 30 years. As one of the countries with the highest number of IDPs per capita, Azerbaijan started also actively engaged in reducing global displacement numbers via ensuring safe, dignified, and sustainable return of IDPs. Unfortunately, this process entails many challenges, including extensive contamination of these territories with landmines, which hampers return and reintegration activities. Recognizing the importance of this issue, the government of Azerbaijan is actively advocating for mine action to be adopted as the 18th SDG, and expecting support from international community as it also addresses one of the global challenges that hinders human mobility. In addition, along with a great number of IDPs, Azerbaijan hosts more than 250,000 refugees expelled from Armenia who have united as a community with the simple goal of peaceful return to their historical lands. Although the government achieved sustainable solution to their economic and social problems, their return would be a great contribution to upholding their human rights, as it's the case for every refugee around the world. Committed to its international obligations, Republic of Azerbaijan has extended number and scope of voluntary pledges in order to ensure continuity of our progress in achieving the goals of Global Compact on Refugees. In this sense, we pledge to ensure voluntary, safe, and dignified return of IDPs to their former place of residence in the liberated Karabakh and East Zangezur regions of Azerbaijan, to facilitate and support the voluntary return of the Azerbaijanis expelled from Armenia to their homes in safety and with dignity, to continue the practice of covering higher education fees of a refugee, also with extending this pledge to vocational education, to enhance social integration and inclusivity of refugees, to further strengthen efforts at the national level in the direction of identification and documentation of stateless persons. Excellencies, lastly, we believe that only by reinforcing our actions in the field of responsibility and burden sharing, as well as focusing on takeaways from this forum, we can improve refugee situation and witness higher implementation rate by the third GRF, and Azerbaijan stands ready to contribute to this action. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Azerbaijan, and now I give the floor to, I pass back the chairmanship to Mr. High Commissioner. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur.
Thank you very much, Ambassador.
Thank you all for your pledges and statements. We have a very special session now for the next 20-25 minutes before we wrap up for the day, and that's why we had to interrupt the speakers list. So this is a novelty of this year's Global Refugee Forum, because this evening 8 multi-stakeholder pledges will be announced. What are multi-stakeholder pledges? These are pledges made by different actors, states and other actors that are not states, and they're intended to have a very large-scale reach around an ambitious common goal, aiming to be transformational and establish long-term arrangements for inclusion, protection, solutions for refugees. And let me stress that, which we have already mentioned. These pledges, these multi-stakeholder pledges, are a clear demonstration of burden and responsibility sharing in action. And they are really at the heart, they demonstrate the partnership approach which is at the heart of the Global Compact on Refugee, and they show how much more can be achieved when we bring our strengths together in support of refugees and host community. We have already heard today about pledges, individual pledges. We heard this morning from the co-conveners from Colombia, for example, about the peace-building pledge. We heard from France about the Avec Elle multi-stakeholder pledge for refugee women. We heard from Japan the announcement of a humanitarian development peace nexus pledge. We heard from the President of the International Olympic Committee on the sports pledge. So this afternoon, just now, and in the next 3 days at regular intervals, we'll interrupt the speakers list, and we will hear some pledger speaking on behalf of all the others take the floor briefly and announce new pledges. Of course, these pledges will be announced here in the plenary, but there are many other ways to announce the pledges in other high-level events that are running in parallel with the plenary. Like I said, the pledges will be announced, these pledges will be announced by one speaker each on behalf of all those leading and contributing the pledges. I hope I'm not confusing you completely, but you will be quite clear once we start doing it. So I will call each speaker to the rostrum, and at that time, when the speaker of the pledge comes to the rostrum to make the pledge, I would like all those states and other actors that participate in the pledge to stand up while the pledge is introduced. Because that way, of course, we will have a visual sense of who is making the pledge. So let me begin. I hope you're ready. We will begin with an announcement on economic inclusion and social protection by Ms. Carrie Diener, Executive Director of the Refugee Self-Reliance Initiative. And I ask all those contributing to this pledge, economic inclusion and social protection, to please stand up.
Thank you, Mr. High Commissioner. A staggering 1 in 73 people in the world are now forcibly displaced. We need a better response, one that reorients humanitarian and development responses towards self-reliance approaches that benefit both hosting countries and forcibly displaced populations. The multi-stakeholder pledge on economic inclusion and social protection aims to reach millions of people by 2027 with enabling law and policy changes and effective programming in host countries, underpinned by multi-partner collaboration, quality data and evidence, and over $1 billion in committed funding. I am so honored to represent the extraordinary vision, commitments, and efforts of a wide range of stakeholders from across the globe, while centering the aspirations, voice, and participation of those with lived experience of forced displacement. With inclusive development comes shared prosperity. Please join us.
Many thanks, Ms. Diener, Executive Director, for your pledge. Many thanks to all those who stood up to support the pledge. The next announcement is the pledge on inclusion of refugee children in national education systems, and it will be presented by Ms. Hala Khan, who's a refugee youth leader, and I invite her to the rostrum, and I ask all those contributing to this pledge, inclusion of refugee children in national education system, to please rise.
Good afternoon, good evening all, thank you so much. I would like to thank UNHCR for giving me the opportunity as a refugee myself to announce the Education Mega Pledge. The vision of the pledge is for all refugees, children, especially the most vulnerable, to be safe and to continue their learning by including them in national education systems. This is the most socially inclusive approach and is the best way to reach the most children with the prospect of decent learning outcomes. Where temporary programs are needed, the pledge calls for them to be designed to transition children into national education systems as soon as possible. I know how important access to education is. I spent almost a year in Turkey out of school after fleeing Syria in 2012. It was only when I got into college that I started to learn Turkish language and feel I was building my future again. I hope all partners here today can work closely together to realize the ambition of the Education Mega Pledge and ensure all refugees are safe and can continue to learn. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hala Kankan. Much appreciated, and thanks to all those who supported the pledge. The third next announcement will be on the pledge on skills-based complementary pathways. And it will be announced by Mr. Norimasa Ori, Representative Director of Pathways Japan. And I ask all those contributing to this pledge to please rise.
The Global Task Force on Refugee Labor Mobility and the Global Task Force for Third Country Education Pathways have been mobilizing actors to increase refugee access to job and higher education opportunities in third countries. Our goal is to help 200,000 refugees depart on labor and education pathways in 5 years' time. It is ambitious, to be sure, but in this forum, states like Canada, Australia, Belgium, Italy, and Japan, academic institutions like Bard College and Louis University, NGOs like Refuge Point, Talent Beyond Boundaries, and HIAS, law firms like Fragment, and other actors like USC are making pledges in support of labor and education pathways. Expanding access to job and study opportunities is a tangible way to show solidarity and share the opportunities. With this commitment in this forum, the both task forces are excited to see what lies ahead. Investing in refugee skills means investing in the sustainable future for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for supporting this pledge. The next announcement is a double one, so you'll have double time. And it will be on national health system inclusion and on mental health and psychosocial well-being. And it will be announced by my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, Director General of the World Health Organization, and by Ms. Louange Akosiwa-Kofi, who is a nurse and a refugee expert. I hope I'm saying it correctly. So I ask also all those contributing to this pledge to please stand up. Dr. Tedros, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Filippo, my good friend, and Fratello, my brother. Good afternoon. Refugees have the same right to health as anyone else. And yet, too often, that right is denied because the health services they need are out of reach due to discrimination, poor living conditions, and financial, linguistic, and cultural barriers. WHO is proud to work with UNHCR and all health partners to promote, provide, and protect the health of refugees. We call on all countries to ensure that refugees are included in national health systems and have access to all health services they need, including for mental health and psychosocial support, as part of their journey towards universal health coverage. Health for all means all, including refugees. Today, we're proud to announce pledges from countries, partners, civil society, and the private sector. To tell you more, I'm proud to introduce Lounge Coffee, Nurse Lounge Coffee. Please.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm so privileged to be here to announce the pledges. As a refugee and a nurse, I can attest to the importance to have equitable access to health services, including mental health and psychosocial support. Without it, we cannot thrive and contribute to the societies that so generously help us or assist us. We are delighted to announce that we have received 143 transformational pledges to strengthen health and access and foster mental health and psychosocial support, including 27 by member states, others by non-governmental agencies, international organizations, civil society, and the private sector. This is only the beginning of the great work to be done. Join hands with us today in extending a lifeline to those in need to ensure a healthier tomorrow for those forced to flee and for those who host them. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tedros. Thank you, Nurse Louage, for your double pledge, and thanks all that supported it. The next one is the announcement of a pledge on climate action and finance, and it will be announced by Ms. Joelle Hangi, Inclusivity Lead of the Global Platform for Action. And again, I ask all those contributing to this pledge to please rise.
Thank you so much, High Commissioner. It's with great pleasure that I'm taking this opportunity to announce the Climate Action Pledge, a pledge that is so close to my heart because I know the pain that comes from realizing that refugee camp, place that used to give us hope for a better future, is no longer a safe space when it comes to climate change. The Climate Action Pledge aims to ensure that by 2027, hosting developing countries and settings that are affected by climate change have access to improved access to climate action, including capacity building and financing. Most importantly, refugees and other categories of forced displaced persons have access to clean action as national through their inclusion as all relevant laws, policies, plan, and programming. Thanks to all contributors who are really working toward to ensure that this pledge is coming through, and I'll, of course, acknowledge Denmark, Ethiopia, Germany, and Somali, as well as other institutions and national who are supporting this pledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joelle Hangi, and thanks to all those who contributed. So the next one is the United Nations Common Pledge, and it will be announced by Ms. Julia Sheikh, advisor of the New Zealand Refugee Advisory Panel. Now, this is special because I'm asking, of course, again, all those contributing to please rise, including, please, all United Nations staff present here tonight.
E te reire, teitei, katia, kaihei, katia. If the effort is sustained, we can reach great heights. As a member of New Zealand Refugee Advisory Panel, who has helped co-create the pledge as part of its group of refugee experts, I am honored to present to you the UN Common Pledge 2.0 on refugee inclusion. The UN Common Pledge 2.0 gathers more than 30 UN agencies and 49 UN country teams under the leadership of resident coordinators, pledging to support host countries to include refugees in their national system, advocate for international responsibility, sharing and advise meaningful participation on refugees. The combined commitments under the pledge will reach more than 50 million vulnerable people on the move globally, and draws on the expertise of the entire UN to advise the full range of sustainable development goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia Sheikh. Thank you all who contributed. The next pledge is on connected education, and it will be announced by Mr. Joachim Reiter, Chief External and Corporate Affairs Officer of Vodafone. Please, all those who contributed, please rise.
Should be more.
You are connected with the world. Go ahead.
Thank you. With the world increasingly turning to technology-supported learning, refugee learners and their host communities remain digitally deprived. As part of the commitment towards ensuring high-quality learning for refugees and nationals, Vodafone is delighted to announce, on behalf of the GRF Education Alliance, a new multi-stakeholder pledge, the Refugee Connected Education Challenge. The key outcome is to achieve access to high-quality connected education for refugees by 2030. Also, I'm pleased to share Vodafone and Vodafone Foundation's contribution to this pledge. On behalf of the Global Partnership for Ethiopia, consisting of Vodafone, Vodacom, Safaricom, Sumitomo Corporation, BII, and the IFC, we commit to progressing school connectivity and access to quality education for all in that country. Also, let me report that we're very proud, together with UNHCR, to have achieved already 300,000 students, refugees, learners, including 5,000 teachers in 118 schools in 6 African countries through the Instant Network Schools program targeted at refugee education. We call on all to commit to the Refugee Connected Challenge and close the digital divide that refugees and displaced learners face. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joachim Reiter. This is actually a fantastic initiative, which I know well. Thank you very much, and thank you all who supported this pledge. We have come to the final pledge. It's a very important one, and I hope everybody will understand that it refers to one of the most dramatic situations refugees, migrants, people on the move can find themselves in. The pledge is on developing comprehensive responses to the protection challenges faced by refugees and migrants moving by sea. And it will be announced by Ms. Yusra Mardini, two-time refugee Olympic athlete and founder of the Yusra Mardini Foundation. Yusra, you have the floor, and please, all those who support this pledge, rise.
Thank you so much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Yusra Mardini. I'm a former refugee. Probably some of you know that I participated in the swimming competitions at the Olympic Games as a member of the refugee team, and because of a film based on my life, which is titled The Swimmers. But unless you saw that film, and few were just to see me standing in this room, you would not guess that swimming is what saved my life while trying to reach Europe and seek asylum. Today, on behalf of OHCR, IFRC, IOM, UNODC, the Center of Humanitarian Action at Sea, and UNHCR, I have the honor to announce a pledge that embodies the commitment to protect refugees who move by sea. This means, first of all, a commitment to humanity to persevere the lives of those who are compelled to take to the sea. Protection at sea can be fostered in different ways, including by building capacities to provide or coordinate rescue, by dismantling guidance among shipmasters, or again, by ensuring that nobody is disembarked in places that are not safe. In the movie, my father says, "In the water, you're on your own. It's your fight." But strengthening protection along sea routes is a collective effort and responsibility. For this reason, I am appealing to your conscience and inviting everyone, state, humanitarian, private actors, to sing on this pledge and contribute to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yusra, for sharing with us this very important pledge, and thanks to those who supported the pledge. This brings this moment to conclusion. We will have more of these moments throughout the rest of the Global Refugee Forum tomorrow and the next day. And this brings us to the end of today's discussion, so thank you very much for contributing. Apologies for those whose intervention will have to now be in the morning. We will continue, we will reopen the speakers list when we meet again here tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. But before you go, please don't go yet, because before closing tonight, I would like to hand the floor to Anne, to the Secretary, for a couple of important announcements. Please pay attention.
Thank you very much, High Commissioner. Distinguished delegates, I have 3 announcements. The first one is the 2023 Nansen Refugee Award Ceremony will take place this evening right above us. Guests attending the ceremony can access the venue by proceeding up the steps towards the entrance doors and checking in to your right by the escalators to Hall 1, which is upstairs. Please note that the event is by invitation only, and guests must have an badge to access the award ceremony. If you have any questions, please speak to the attendants at the Nansen Help Desk at the escalators. Secondly, I wish to request delegates to leave the headsets and receivers on the desks or chairs in the room so that we can use them again tomorrow. And lastly, please note that bus 5 will first drop off delegates at the airport before proceeding to Hall 7 for ease of access. Thank you, High Commissioner.
And please see all of you at the Nansen Award ceremony, which begins at 7 o'clock, if I'm not upstairs. Thank you very much.